the last 5 years.
Play the sound clip. This is a great show.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. See this? This is my boomstick.
Hey, folks, welcome back to Firing Line Radio Show. This is Philip Naiman. Merry Christmas again. And as you know, we're sponsored by Bullseye Sports Guns and Ammo. And unfortunately, they're closed today, so you can't run in there and buy everything you need. But Monday's coming. So head on out there on Monday. I was just out there a week ago. I found 3 fantastic things that came in on consignment. I'm telling you guys, shop early, shop often. That's what you want to do at Bullseye Sports Guns and Ammo. Get yourself a training certificate, get trained, get armed, get protected, and then start buying stuff just for fun. Bullseyesports.com, 951-823-0211, 951-823-0211. Say hello to Vince. Have a happy new year, and we'll see you guys on the other side there. Folks, here on the show, I have Hyrum Nielson and Todd Baughner, and we are talking about the chances that I got to actually go on a fantastic hunt last year. Actually, it was this year, but last summer in Alaska. And as we just cut to that last break, Todd was talking about how when you land, you know, and you look around and you realize that you are on your own. There is nothing else out there. If you're watching along at home on a video, we'll have a little have some pictures that we're showing off here. So our first picture that we have, where are we at here? So the first picture that I'm showing here on the screen is from our first camp. Now we landed in a Piper Cub, Super Cub. You're not getting to anywhere in Alaska without one of those because it had to cross this giant silty marshland river. It was only about 15 miles or 20 miles from a small little airstrip, but I'm telling you, it'd take you a week to cross that land with all that marsh and all that silt and all that junk. So the Super Cub landed us here on this gravel bar. I think the flight was not Hyrum's favorite part of the entire trip, but he might want to comment on that. But landed on these rocks, on this gravel bar, and we offloaded. Now, Todd had already been there for several days, and he actually had a hunter in there first. Todd, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I got there like 4 days before the opener to kind of move some rocks around, get things situated. And so the first day of hunting season is August 10th. And so my hunter showed up the day before on the 9th. So opening day, we actually saw a couple 3 legal rams. And so we decided on one of them. And we downscaled our packs and off we went. So that took several hours, probably 5 or 6 hours to get up to the point where we needed to set up spike camp. We set up, we found a little water hole up there, which was a blessing. So we set up there, crystal clear water, and the sheep were using it, obviously. And so we got up early, 3:30 or 4 o'clock opening morning, and I actually got up into a spot where I had seen the ram before. I sat there and figured that this band of rams would come down and we'd be able to get a shot. Well, that never happened. It's not like it's not a runway. You're not going to, they're just free roaming. So what I did is I gave it to about 10:30, 11 o'clock. So we kind of gathered our stuff up, spotting scopes and such, and I wanted to keep going in that general direction, thinking that maybe the rams were over the top of the mountain, maybe on the back side of it. And sure enough, we probably walked another 3 or 4 hours to get over this top of this little saddle, and the rams were actually bedded down, facing in all different directions, which is a common situation for rams. So we dropped and on the ground, and I was able to low crawl, I don't know, 50, 60 yards. And I got a spotting scope out, got it on the rams, and was able to locate the nearest one to us was a full curl, which a ram in Alaska, to be legal, has to one of the criteria is it has to be 360 degrees, a full curl. So any less than that is a sublegal ram. So the one that was closest to us was a legal ram. The hunter low crawled up to us. We went up to me, and we low crawled about 100 yards in these rocks. So we scooted on up over a little bench, and we were able to actually shoot that ram as he was laying down chewing his cud. So that was a stellar hunt. So that really started out. The Lord really blessed us with that sheep, and
And the gentleman you were hunting with actually won that hunt at the Sheep Foundation. So that was kind of a cool thing for him too.
That's correct. So that story is actually in Wild Sheep, the Wild Sheep
magazine.
Magazine, yeah. So
that's
awesome
pretty
hunt.
Cool. So then you knew the area basically a couple days later, because you can't just decide, okay, I'm leaving now. We've got the wind issue to deal with, because the wind, if it doesn't suck, it's blowing. So there's only sometimes, number one, when the Super Cub can get in there. Number two, when he's available to come in there. So a couple of days later, they flew you guys out. I actually ran into that guy at the runway as I was coming in. And then this is the camp. On the screen right now, we're looking at the camp. Folks, if you're watching this on video on YouTube, on the right-hand side, you'll see a cliff. That cliff was 1 mile from our camp. It looks like it's just a little bit there. Then from that cliff to those other cliffs behind it is another mile. And then there's another mile to the third set. And then it's about 7 miles as a crow flies to the back mountains. It's just, the country is so big and deceiving. We'll have other pictures coming up looking to the left up this canyon where this unbelievable glacier was at that, again, just keeps on going. So Hyrum, we're looking at this picture we have here. This is a picture of the cliffs of insanity, I think I would call them. So as we crossed this moraine and all this rock and all this river bottom, which really wasn't too bad, and we got into some rock hopping, but then we had to cross these crumbly 45, 60 degree cliffs straight up to the top of these plateaus. And this was just the first set of stuff. So Hyrum, was this your favorite part of the hunt?
The cliffs were an interesting thing, because up to that point, I know that Todd had went up and went around the backside where they got that first ram, but going up this direction, it was kind of a new little experience. So it was kind of like, let's pick a finger and kind of try and figure our way through it. And it wasn't like it was too intimidating, but it was just one of those deals where it's like, if you don't pick the right direction, then you're going to get yourself caught in a situation. And that's what it is with, it seems like most hunting up here, is that you got to be, it's not just like, hey, we're going to run over the edge there and figure out what's going on. You really do.
No.
You need to make a little plan before you jump,
Yeah, this is a good idea. Planning is much better than just doing, because if you just start doing things, you're going to be doing them for hours on hours. Next picture we have here, folks, is if you're listening on radio, we're up on the plateau where we camped. Now from down below, this is the area that Todd had spied out and he wanted us to camp in, but we had to wait for a little bit. Number one, it was raining really hard. Number two, we had to wait for the grizzly bears to clear this spot, because there was 2 young grizzly bears were there. First grizzly bears I've seen in the wild. They were called Beavis and Butthead because they were just like 2 little twin brothers that just they were everywhere. They're running on this ridge, that ridge. They were digging for gophers. They were eating blueberries. They were like active, and they were a bit of a concern for a while, at least for me. Number one, never seeing a grizzly before, then seeing 2. And so they were actually feeding in this particular spot where we camped. Then we used the KUIU tents, which I think were pretty much awesome, especially because the water or the ground was so wet and everybody stayed dry with that. But so they're feeding right in this area for blueberries and cranberries and gophers, and it's the perfect idea. They've already been here, so they'll go somewhere else, was our theory. But it was a great camp spot out of the wind and under a bluff, so the sheep above us couldn't see us, because the sheep have such good eyesight, they will literally blow out of the area if they see you. The other thing that, folks, these 2 guys I'm with, Hyrum and Todd, are absolutely professionals. Everybody's voice was low in camp. It was just, I've been around a lot of guys in the field and they don't realize how far their voice carries. But if you're in a camp like this, where you've just busted your hump carrying 70 pounds from the far end of one world to the other, And you're just up there laughing and joking. You will blow the sheep out of the canyons. And if they're out of those canyons, you've got to go to the next ones to find them. And that's, discipline in camp, I think, was a big thing. And I just watched these guys. They were the consummate professionals. And so we ate here and slept here. And these were this boggy, kind of a, not quite tundra, but just a boggy bluff that we were on. And the sheep did not come down to us. We gave them ample opportunity to do so, but they did not come down to us. So that was the one area there. We're going to talk a little bit more about the hunt as we come back from here. This is Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio Show. You can find this on our YouTube channel, Firing Line Radio Show. If you want to get a hold of Todd, you can get a hold of him at guide Todd Baughner, Boughner at yahoo.com, and we'll be right back. All right. I was, because I had the screen share, I was running running a timer over here, Dan. So we're ready for period 3. Dan?
Okay, hang on a second. I got to get a new timer because I can't use the timer on that screen.
So the next couple of pictures here, Todd, looking across that glacier, and then kind of just waiting out the fog when it rolled in. And then the climb for the hunt we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm ready. You ready?
Ready.
Here we go.
Spartans! Lay down your weapons! Come and get them!
Hey folks, Moulin Labe Christmas for you. Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio Show. Hope you're having a great day, great Christmas. We're talking about a wonderful trip that I was able to take last summer with Alaskan Dall Sheep Guides and with Todd Baughner and Hyrum Nielson. Hyrum's up there in Alaska. Todd's calling in from Wyoming, from Michigan. A little bit different, but pretty close. We just talked about getting into our camp and our location. We're camped on this bluff overlooking this, I think it's a Chasana Glacier. And the country is so vast. Hyrum, if I could jump with you on this question here, or actually Todd, you've been up to that area so many times. I mean, how far can you see? I mean, this is an area that people can't really get to. You've got miles and miles of broken glacier. You couldn't carry enough food for the time it's going to take you over there if you didn't just fall into a hole and die. I mean, this country is just so hard to describe. You want to give it a shot?
Oh boy. I don't know if I can describe that, to be honest with you. I think you have to go experience it, because it's funny. You're sitting there on the slope and you may see a caribou or a grizzly bear or something, and your hunter will say, "How far is it? How far is it?" I'll say, "Well, how far do you think it is?" "Well, it's probably 300. Well, then, you range find it and it's 650 or whatever. And so everything is further away than you think, especially when you're either going after an animal or coming back. It's, you can see that far, but your mind just doesn't, your head doesn't get wrapped around how far it is until you actually put boots in the ground. You start walking towards that, and it's endless. It's like you see a valley, or if you see, a point that hey, let's get to that point and then we can do whatever. And you walk and you walk and you walk. And it's like, are you kidding me? Is everything out here like it is? It's just vast. And it takes some time to get used to that. So I don't know if I can adequately describe that to someone unless you've been there. So
the other thing is, when you see them, when you look out there and you see the mountains, you're like, well, that's not that steep. But because you don't realize how far away it is, when you get there, it not only does it get steep, but it kind of curls back. It looks like a wave of rocks that's rolling towards you.
Right.
Because it's just the top of the higher up you go, the steeper it gets. It's just an amazing thing. We had some fog that came in. So I think for a day and a half, we were kind of locked out of pretty much climbing the hills, because you don't want to go up into the mountains and bump something in the fog, if you can't see it, there's not much you can do about it. So we had like a day and a half of just sitting around waiting. And I think waiting is so much of the game, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you think, Hyrum?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's one thing that I think is the hardest thing, and especially with sheep hunting, and also, as you know, with like brown bear hunting and stuff, is that people just want to go pack up and keep hiking around in the mountains. And if you can't see, you can't hear, you can't really make a good plan, you're going to ruin your hunt if you just go traipsing into the woods most of the time in these cases, because these animals, I mean, they get into their patterns and they live there. And so as soon as you start disrupting that, they take off. And so that, I know that's one thing that's hard even for me, is wanting to be patient and do it at the right time. Because it's like, holy cow, we've been glassing for 3 days and we haven't moved from this knoll. Shouldn't we go over here or shouldn't we go over there? And yes, you got to make those choices, but it's also one of those things like, well, I'm tired of doing this, let's just go do something else. And that can ruin a hunt that you have either paid a lot of money for or taken a lot of time, or, you know, done that hard work to get there and stuff. And it can really put a sour experience if you're not careful. So
yeah. And the other part on that is, go ahead, Todd.
I was going to say, well said. And what happens is, many times in the sheep arena is the ewes and lambs are down lower and the rams are up higher. So what happens is you get antsy and you get fog that comes in and out, and it's like, well, I can see now, and you can see for an hour, and then it blows in again and you can't see, and the wind is shifting. And so wind is critical with rams, and so is in sight. So rams have the equivalent of 7-power binocular, eyesight. And so if you get antsy, or if you, that's why it's important to trust your guide. If he has a gut feeling and he says, I think we just need to sit tight, as much as you want to go and do and get up there, whatever it is you're hunting, especially sheep, just trust your guide. And it's important that you have patience. And you name one thing right now that you can't go get right now. Name, other than maybe a Dall ram. But I mean, you can go to any store you want to, you can get what you want within 10 minutes for most of the people in America. I want it now, I'm going to go get it. And what happens is you get to Alaska, and guess what? You got to wait. Well, what am I waiting for? What are we waiting? I'm waiting for the wind to change, or I'm waiting to be able to see correctly, or I'm waiting because I just don't feel right about it for whatever reason. So you have to learn to be patient.
Well, I think that's the other part in preparing for a hunt like this. I was hiking nonstop, and I actually had to deal with the knee surgery in the middle of everything, and I was really worried about that. But shooting and different positions and weird stuff and gear selection. And the other part that I told myself and I really wanted to focus on was you have to be coachable. You're not going to spend this money and hire these professionals to take you up there to tell them what you want on your first hunt when you've never seen any of these things before. Like, yeah, I've knocked over a lot of deer, a lot of elk, brown bears, nothing with round horns, nothing in those mountains. And I remember this one time we were hiking around, we'll get to that in the next couple of screens, but there was 4 rams on a ridge line. I couldn't see them. They were behind them was snow, but Hyrum was our lead. He picked them up on there. And it's like, I would have blown those guys out if I was by myself. And so you just have to, your guides are there for a reason. I mean, they're not your butler. They're not your pack service. They're not there to tie your shoes, but they're there to give you a professional hunt. And I think that you need to treat them with respect and honor their judgment, because, you don't know. I didn't know. Like I said, I've hunted a lot before, but that's down here, and that really doesn't count. Maybe counts a little, but not at the level of sheep hunting. And the optics that come into play, you guys were on your spotting scopes looking at stuff all the time. And you had to make a judgment call. Like, we watched one ram on a hillside for several hours, and it's like, well, he may be legal, but in order to get there, it's an 8-hour hike. So do you put in the 8-hour hike and then you're 8 hours away from camp for a maybe legal, or do you wait? And so as antsy as you get wanting to get something done, I think Alaska forces patience on you.
Well put. Yeah. Well put.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so that's without being patient, you sometimes and many times it foils the whole thing. That's why it's important for a guide to understand and listen to your hunter. But on the other hand, sometimes you just have to say, no, I know you want to go now, but we've got to wait. And so it can be a little bit of a tug of war on that, but you've got to stick your guns and know that what you're doing is the right move. Does it always pan out? Do you always come off the mountain on that particular situation with a ram? No, but the more things you can stack on your side, the better off, the more successful you're going to be. The wind, no fog, all these things that you can put on the right-hand side and put on your side, I think is going to make you a more successful hunter. And listening to the guide that's done it before, that knows when to go and when to sit tight.
One of the things we're sitting on there in the fog, and Beavis and Butthead started coming up the canyon below us, and it's amazing, folks, how fast grizzly bears move. If you look at the terrain on the screen here, nothing's flat, and they're literally jogging up this hill, and there's two of them, and they got level with a sheep kill, and all of a sudden they went from a jog to a 90-degree sprint towards the sheep kill. And I'm like, holy crud, and it was a couple hundred yards away. They ran over to it and they're rolling it and having a good time. And then another grizzly bear comes from over the ridge and he just barks. And those two, Beavis and Butthead, run off to the right, but they're on a ridge line. And sure enough, the fog lifts and there's a band of like 17 or 18 animals or rams that are not just rams. I think they're mostly sheep and ewes, but anyway, lambs and ewes, but they were coming over and they're miles away from the grizzly bears, but they see the grizzly bears. So what do? They leave the country. And there's so many things that are going on up there against you. And again, Alaska is Alaska. It's just an amazing place. So we did all the waiting, and then Hyrum said, hey, tomorrow we're going up the hill. So we'll talk about that when we come back here. This is Philip Naiman, firinglineradio.com for the podcast. We'll be right back after this. I don't know why that keeps doing that. Need to be able to stop that.
You ready to roll?
Ready to roll.
Yes! Great hunter. Yes? Fine figure of a man. Yes? Yes?
Yes.
That is all you need to know for now.
Hey, folks, welcome back to Firing Line Radio Show. I'm with two great hunters here, Hyrum Nielson and Todd Baughner, and you can get a hold of Todd at guide Todd Baughner, Boughner, at yahoo.com if you want to talk to him about some hunting. We're talking about my Alaska trip from last August, and we were a day and a half in fog. We're laying around there, and Hyrum says, okay, we've been patient. I have an idea. Let's just hike straight up the face of this mountain and try and kill Philip. And if Philip dies, then we can have Mont fly his corpse out and we can all go have a beer and a pizza. So Hyrum starts this hike.
Actually, that was the plan.
I didn't fool me. I'm a little old. I know these things. He starts hiking up the same canyon that those grizzly bears are running up. And if you're looking on screen on our YouTube channel here, you'll see a plateau that we hiked up to. And as soon as we got to this little plateau on our left-hand side, a little ewe came over the top, and we were hoping he's going to bring somebody with him, but he didn't. So we continued hiking and hiking and hiking. And this next picture, I took a picture of just looking down. The angles are hard to see. This doesn't look like you're on the surface of the moon, and it's not, because the surface of the moon is relatively flat compared to this place. But we just hiked 4,000 feet from the bottom of the, about 3,000 from our camp, to the top of this thing. From the riverbed to the camp was a full 1,000 feet elevation. It was just huge what was involved in this. And then we hiked over the top. Hyrum took us, I think it was north and east of the ridge line, looking into another bowl, and we're in a glacier. And this particular glacier, Hyrum says, I have an idea. Let's make Philip walk across this glacier. He'll fall in the hole of death, and then we can call Mont and have him excavate the body, and we can all go home and have a pizza. But I did survive the glacier barely. So we got into this rock area, and this is where he found the four rams on our left that were on the snow line. And then Todd saw another 4 on a hillside off to our right. And land in Alaska should be measured in zip codes, because the bands on the right, you can see them, right? They're white. They're standing out, but they're 2.5 miles away. I'm like, oh, 2.5 miles. So I can do 2.5 miles. It's not 2.5 miles. It's that particular, it would have been about 7 or 8 hours of hiking to get there. So it's 2.5 miles, but you're not going as a crow flies. It's a long, long way. And there are rocks everywhere. Hyrum, I think I told you this as I said a prayer, said, Lord, how many rocks did you make? And his answer was all of them. So, I mean, rocks are everywhere. And we left this area, if you're looking on the screen here, went over a saddle and had this unbelievably steep pitch. And this is where my knee that was replaced gave me a little bit of an issue. With a knee replacement, you don't get a full bend in your knee. So clearing rocks, stepping over them, I started like 3 times. My toe would catch on something and I'd stumble. And that was not a lot of fun. But we had to get through that because we were on a hunt. And so this next screen, we took a picture of just how steep this was. This is me standing up, and everything's 45 to 60 degrees in the middle of the hill. It gets steeper towards the top, and the rocks just keep on coming. So this is a picture from where we took the ram. Again, it's just 60-degree angles. It just was absolutely stupid. Well, it was stupid that I put myself in that position. How's that? So we came over the top of the saddle, and we cleared the first bowl we had to go through. Was very, very noisy. Rocks were sliding all over the place. The second one wasn't so bad. It was a little less steep, and we came to these pinnacles up here. And on these pinnacles, you guys went over the top and looked, and you're like, yes, there's rams. There's a shooter, meaning a full crow ram. And I'm looking at those rams like they're 2 days away. I see 2 deathly canyons between here and there. If I made the shot, where do we go from here, right? So let me jump this over to Hyrum. This is where we saw the sheep. We're on that castle-like pinnacle on the hill, and then you look down the ridge line, right? So Hyrum, why don't you pick it up from there?
All right. So yeah, as he was saying, when we came out of that spot where we crossed that little bit of snow glacier stuff, it was a pretty steep, risky situation, like you said. Not that I felt like we were in danger, but it was one of those things where you did not want to step wrong. And as we came across the front of there, Todd and I both had thought, we'd seen another ram a few days earlier that was, like, as Phil was saying, long ways away, but it looked right at dusk, and it looked like he was legal. And it's like, where could he possibly be? We'd watched other sheep that had kept going back into this area. And so we're like, it's got to be a bull back up in there. And so when we got up on that ridge and looked down on that backside, it was like a knife's edge. And it was like steep as can be on our side. But then on the backside, there was a ram that was about 600 or 800 yards away that we could see. Oh yeah, he looks like a legal ram. And then down across the canyon, like Phil said, there was another one. And so it was kind of like, well, let's start making a play. And I thought, I feel like we better look over the front right where we're at, because it dropped off pretty good right in front of us. But it's like, you know what, let's take a look. So as Phil was taking a look at those other rams, I decided to peek over that knife edge. And I started like tiptoeing over and looking. And as soon as I put my head up, it was like, oh, there's a shooter right there. Like as soon as I saw that lead ram, it was like, that guy's got to go. And so I looked up and I was like, there's shooters right here. And so I backed up out of their view, and I told Phil, I'm like, get ready. And then I also looked at Todd, and I was like, Todd, look at this ram right now. And as soon as he put up the scope, he's like, oh yeah, that's a nice ram. And we could tell because of the angle, you couldn't see that it was full curl, but just by the mass and the width and everything, it was like, that is a monster ram. And so, yeah, then it put everything into action to trying to, not make too much movement, because the thing was only like 140 yards away. The wind was blowing up towards us, which was lucky, but it was only like 140 yards away. And that thing knew that there was something going on, but he couldn't see what was going on. And that was the advantage, and always the advantage when hunting sheep, is getting above them. They're not used from death above, they're used to having things come from below them. And so it was kind of like, what's going on, but I'm going to eat. What's going on, but I'm going to eat. And so, yeah, it was to our advantage, but it got hot and heavy real fast when we found that ram.
So the scope, the rangefinder says 145 to 155 yards, but the line of sight was a little over 300. It's so steep up there. If you've done long range shooting, you want to go with your horizontal distance, which was like 145, but it was a little over 300 yards from line of sight to this ram. So it's really was interesting. And so, made the shot. I hit him 3 times, and I learned a lot about shooting downhill, because I put the bullet where I wanted it to hit, but because of the extreme angle of it coming down, it only clipped the corner of his lung. It didn't go right through. Had it been more of a horizontal shot, the first one would have double lunged him. We'd have had no problem, but it clipped and went down. So like, you missed. I'm like, don't say that to me. I'm too prideful to say that. I didn't miss. I don't want to argue about it, but I didn't miss. And I literally was leaning.
The nice thing with the shots that you made, though, is that had you double lunged him and he kind of piled up right immediately, we would have been going down that mountain to pick him up, and then we would have had a whole different story to deal with. The whole situation with the way that it hit him, and he kind of patiently died. It made it to where he laid right on that edge, and we luckily didn't have to chase a ram that rolled clear down the mountain. So,
yeah, we were absolutely.
It worked out great.
Absolutely blessed on that. And so we ended up with this beautiful 40 and a half on one side and 39 and 5/8 on the other, full curl ram that was absolutely gorgeous, and just old, 9.5+ years, beautiful ram. Honestly, guys, I was very emotional. It just was such a lifetime achievement, and it wouldn't have happened without these 2 gentlemen that I have on the show here today. So there's a picture of them with the ram, and it was amazing. And then we had to hike it out of there. So I know we only have about a minute left on the show, but the next day we hiked out, and, thank God I had 2 packers there. Well, after the hunt, they turned into packers, but they actually cleaned the animal, which was nice. In Alaska, you have to take all of the animal out. So, there's a picture here where we literally stripped it all the way down to the bones. We took all the meat, we took the head, and it was just amazing. The next day we climbed back down the cliffs of insanity. And there is a further story we don't have time to go into today about the grizzly bear that showed up, but it was an amazing hunt. And I want to thank my special guests here, Todd Baughner and Hyrum Nielson. You guys gave me a dream hunt. It was a pleasure to be in the field with you. You're absolute consummate professionals. And if anybody ever has the opportunity to hunt with you, they are lucky folks. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure to be around both you guys, and God bless. Happy Christmas.
Very good. Merry Christmas, folks. We'll talk to you all later, and Happy New Year. We out of time there, Tom? Dan?
We did it. You made it.
Hey.
You survived.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. And yeah, we didn't have time to go into the grizzly, but I think it was a good show. So thanks, man.
Well, being off
the
the air. So everyone dreams of a 10-foot brown bear and a 70-inch bull moose and a 40-inch ram, and you got the 40-inch ram. That was pretty cool, hunt. I appreciate you, and thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Yep. I agree.
Merry Christmas.
I've done as Todd, you've done a lot too, and not very often you come across an experience shooting a ram of that magnitude. So it was awesome and a great privilege. So take care, guys.
Hey,
Take care now.
hey, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
Well, there you go.
So the grizzly probably could smell the meat.